Welcome to Lair the Alchemist. And on today's episode, I have a special guest with me. We are going to be discussing Lizzy Borden. We're going to be talking about focusing on a couple different Lizzy Borden albums for you. And to do this, I have a special friend here joining me today, Chris. He's joining us from North Carolina. And Chris and I are originally from the Allentown, Pennsylvania area. And we played in a band together. I don't think I'm sure I've mentioned my band on this channel before, but I've never really gone much in depth into my old band. But we were called Sinister Realm. We had 3 CDs out. This was the first one. Now, Chris wasn't on this CD. The drummer, Chris is a drummer. The drummer on this CD was Darren, who you see all the time on our Sabbath Sunday. So Darren was on this CD, and then Chris came in, and Chris was on The Crystal Eye and World of Evil. So there you go. I actually have a box of these CDs. Anybody want a CD? Send me a message at lairthealchemist@yahoo.com. $10 plus postage. We'll call it that. All right. So yeah, Chris, thank you so much for joining me here at the Lair. I also
Sure.
mentioned that we opened up for Lizzy Borden
We
when Lizzy
did.
Borden played in Reading, Pennsylvania. So we thought it was fitting. Chris is a big Lizzy Borden fan. I love Lizzy Borden. We got to open up for them. We thought this makes sense. Let's do it. So Chris, thank you for joining me here at the Lair.
Sure. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it. I love Lizzy Borden.
All right, so let's just talk about Lizzy Borden in general. What
Mhm.
what is it that what is it that you like about Lizzy Borden?
Well, back in the 80s, I'm a huge Kiss fan, as you can see. I have my shirt on. I got this whole floor is Kiss, nothing but Kiss. Um, but I always liked the guys that could scream. I love TNT, Tony Harnell, Jeff Tate in the early Queensryche days. The first time that I heard Lizzy Borden, Steve Grimmett from Grim Reaper. When we played with them, Sanity Days in Germany. The only thing I talked to him about was his screaming because I loved it. But when I heard Lizzy Borden, I was just blown away by his vocal range.
Mhm.
So that's the thing that drew me in at first. I love the songs. However, that was the thing that I noticed right off the bat. I think the first song that I heard was Rod of Iron, and there's some very, very high screams in there, and American Metal. So it was one of those two. So as soon as I heard that, I just needed to see what else was out there by Lizzy Borden. So I've been a fan ever since.
Yeah,
And
they're
the
an
theatrics too. That was so different back then.
yeah, they're an interesting band. Like they're an LA band.
Hmm.
And I think when did the first album come out? 85. I should have written it down.
Love You to Pieces was
I do have that written
I
down here
have it written
somewhere.
down.
And,
85, yeah.
yeah, Love You to Pieces, which is the first record. Yeah, we're going to be focusing on 3 records here, which is the first record, Love You to Pieces. This is the third one, I believe,
Yeah.
right? Visual
Yeah,
Lies.
Menace to Society was in the middle.
Yeah, Menace to Society would have been the second one, and then Master of Disguise. And Lizzy Borden is kind of an interesting band because they're from that LA scene of the 80s, yet they're not as glammy as Rat or Motley Crue or Dawkins or on the East Coast Twisted
Faster
Sister.
Pussycat, I think,
Yeah,
was
they
from
weren't
there.
they weren't really as glammy as them. They lean more towards the heavier side, but they're not quite as heavy as, let's say, like Metal Church or Armored Saint, other bands that were, right around that same time period. So for me, they sort of have this mixture of they're heavy, but they're still melodic. And that's what I find really intriguing about them. They're very
Hmm.
melodic. You mentioned Lizzy Borden's vocals. He has a fantastic vocal range. He has a pretty unique voice, but there's this sort of elements and they're a little as we get into the records here, we'll talk about this. They're a little heavier earlier on. They're on Metal Blade Records. I don't know if they still are, but they were on Metal Blade Records for a really long time. And these albums we're going to be talking about are on Metal Blade. So they sort of fit that Metal Blade sound of like Metal Church and Armored Saint, but yet they still have that melodicism that you kind of got from the LA scene. And it's kind of I thought to myself, like, why didn't they? They're one of these bands that never broke. They never got to the level of
Right.
Rat or Dawkins. Motley Crue and all those bands. They were probably on the level of like Armored Saint, Metal Church, maybe a little more popular than those bands, or on the same level. And it's kind of puzzling because as I was listening to these records, I was thinking to myself, like, man, that could have been a radio hit, or that could
Yeah.
have been a radio. I mean, each one of these records has at least two or three songs that could have
Mhm.
been MTV hits or radio hits. And part of it might have been timing. Uh, they kind of weren't quite there, right, for that first up and coming first wave of the LA glam stuff. They were a year or two behind that. Their first album was 85, whereas like Motley and Rat and Doc, and they were all sort of doing their thing like 83, 84, Quiet Riots, those groups. So they sort of missed out on that a little bit. And I think early on, they were heavier early on and they got a little more melodic as the albums went on. And by
Yeah.
the time they were really melodic, the LA glam thing had
Yep.
sort of passed, and now you were into Metallica and
Right.
Anthrax and groups like that. So maybe it was a timing thing. If it's crazy to think that 2 years could have, 2 or 3 years could make that big of a difference. But back then,
Yeah.
when bands are releasing albums every year, stuff moved pretty quickly. So, but yeah, they're a great band, great songwriting. I'm going to show you some. I mentioned that we opened up for Lizzy Borden in Reading, Pennsylvania. What was the name of that club? The Silo? Was
Oh,
that
the
what was?
silo. Yeah.
Yeah, the Silo. So Chris had some pictures here from our show as I'm talking. I'll cut in some pictures here of I believe pictures of you and our singer Alex
Yeah. Me and
with
Alex with Lizzie, and then a couple shots I took with when he was singing. And then the funny part was when we got the show, they told us we needed to supply the back line.
yeah.
And I play a 5-piece kit. I have a double pedal, but I play a 5-piece drum kit. They said Joey Scott needs two bass drums. He needs all these cymbal stands. Like I use two crash cymbal stands, my ride, my splash, and my china. He needs like 10 cymbal stands, two bass drums, this and this, and all this stuff. Luckily, I had at that time, I had my electronic drum kit and three other acoustic kits. One I used at Sinister Realm rehearsal, one I used at my other band's practice space, and my other one was a live kit. My two of my kits were identical. So I was able to take two 5-piece kits, combine them together. So I just used two of the rack toms, but I had two bass drums. I had all the stands. So I was able to accommodate everything that Joey needed. So fortunately, when I got there, everything was perfect for them. And he actually thanked me afterwards and said it was great. Everything sounded great. And it was a great kit. So that was good because I've been a fan for a long time. So making them happy was
Yeah.
made me
You didn't want
happy.
them to be mad at you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they
So it's
were
cool that one of the pictures we have is of Joey, a bunch of them of him playing my kit. And you can see on one of the kick drum heads, it says Sinister Realm on. So that was kind of cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
they were touring without amplifiers and stuff to try to keep the cost down. So they were in like a van, I think, and trying to travel
Yeah.
light so that they could make it work for them. So
Yeah.
okay, let's jump in and let's talk about the first one we got here, which is Love You to Pieces. This is from 1985.
Yeah.
It's on Metal Blade Records, which, as I mentioned earlier, most of their records were on. You got the Metal Blade logo there, and pretty cool. I always like this back cover. I thought that was a pretty cool back cover. Uh,
I think that front cover is one of the coolest covers ever of all time.
it's a little hair metal for me. It's a little glammy, like with the girl and
But just
everything.
him standing back there with the axe and being love you to pieces, and his reflection is perfect. I mean,
I never
it's
even noticed that that was him standing back there. So yeah, you're right. That is pretty cool. I
yeah,
because
him with the axe and the
my eyes
reflection.
were drawn to somewhere else when I was looking at
And
this.
it's hard not to notice that, yeah. But seeing him up there in that left
Yeah.
corner is
Yeah, and then on the back, he just got the shoe
yeah,
and the axe. So
yeah.
maybe
It's
he
about all that. Yeah.
he went to
So
business there with his axe.
yeah,
But Yeah, okay. So this is 1985. It's produced by the band Brian Slagle. Interesting. It's engineered by Randy Burns. Randy Burns would produce and engineer the first Death album, Scream Bloody Gore. This album for me is it's the heavier out of all. Well, you tell me what you think of this record first.
It's definitely the heaviest, and I think it's them at. I mean, what Lizzy Borden was when they started is that, that's the epitome of Lizzy Borden, I think. As they progressed, they got a little more polished. As you can see, a huge difference from Master of Disguise as they get all the way up to there. Um, but when you take what their theatrical stage show was like, and these songs, it all just comes together. Um, they were very raw then, I think, and when you listen, even the recording, it's not the best recording in the world. It's very good, but when you move up to like the Master of the Skies, you can tell a big difference.
Oh
But
yeah.
I just think the songwriting back then was really great, and it really brought his vocals. It really showed what he could do vocally, and even so, like take the song "Love You to Pieces." When you listen to that and you hear the words and you hear him singing it, you can feel like he portrays what is going on in that song in his
Hmm.
the way he sings. And it really draws you in. And that's one thing that really appealed to me listening to them is just the way he sings his songs, even going up every record. It's like every line that he sings, he's just not singing a line just to fill in a song. He means like everything that comes out of his mouth, and you can hear it in his voice, and especially on a lot of the songs in "Love You to Pieces," I think is very noticeable.
Yeah, definitely. There's some stuff on here that's really heavy. Like you mentioned, Rod of Iron
Yeah.
earlier, the last song on the album. That's almost like Judas Priest, like
Yep.
heavy. Godiva is
Hmm.
like a speed metal, almost thrash type number. Council for
Hmm.
the Cauldron. That's just an awesome song title. I wish I had thought of that song title.
Yeah.
That's a great heavy one that opens up the record. Red Rum is another good one, and that was kind of like a one I think that they played live a lot. You mentioned Love You to Pieces. I love that one. It's a
Yeah.
dark, moody ballad. I think that one closes out side one.
Yep.
Also, the band is, and I gotta put my glasses on here to read the other
But
guys in the band.
Save Me is a great song. It's probably the
Yeah.
most, in my opinion, most polished song on there. Like you can hear in some of their later recordings, like that, the way that they progressed. I think "Save Me" is probably the most polished song out of the bunch. But I mean, they're all great. American Metal, great song.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Uh, yeah, is American Metal on this one or is it on
Well, it's on. I think they put it on it. It was on. I think they did it like an LP in the beginning because that's where that it was separate. But I think American Metal was on there.
yeah, yeah, that's great. That's a fantastic anthem. Yep, American Metal's on here. And the
Yeah,
band, you mentioned Save Me. Man, the bass playing on this record in general is great. But on
yeah,
that particular song, he's just all over the bass neck. And it's Mike Davis on bass. The guitars are really good.
mm,
Gene Allen. Tony Matuzak. Of
yeah,
course, you got Lizzie on vocals and Joey Scott Hargis on drums. It's just some really great playing, great guitar playing, and the bass really jumped out at me on this really sort of adventurous and all over the place. So yeah, this is probably the heaviest, most sort of trad metal sounding, again along that sort of Armored Saint metal church line. They could have gone in that direction and they probably would have landed in, that kind of world a little bit more. But as we go to the next one, is this the second or the third one? Where does Menace to Society
Menace to
come?
Society was after "Love You to Pieces,"
Okay, right. So this would
and
be the
then
third one then, Visual
yeah,
Lies. This is 87. This is produced by Max Norman. Max Norman produced a lot of records, notably Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman. Also of note, this has Joe Holmes on guitar. Joe Holmes would play with Ozzy for a number of years, although he never recorded a studio album with Ozzy. you can see picture of the band here, and as Chris mentioned, they were a very visual band. And also, if you're a fan of the decline of Western civilization, the metal
Hmm.
years, you can see Lizzy Borden in that documentary, which I believe I made a video on that. If I remember, I'll try to link it below. But yeah, you can see that they kind of had
And
this,
they did Born to Be Wild on
yeah, unfortunately, right? What a bummer.
there.
I
Yeah.
mean, they sound good, but that's just a
Yeah.
song that I don't really need to hear anybody. I don't want to hear anybody cover that. I would have rather have heard them do one of their own songs.
Yeah.
But all right, so what do you think of Visual Lies, 87? We've moved two albums ahead now.
Again, every song to me, if I had to pick a favorite song on here, I could, but every song is good. Um, there's not a bad song on there, and I think again, as they progressed, the songwriting became more polished, and it's not as heavy. I think Den of Thieves is probably the heaviest song on there. It's the
Yeah.
fastest song. Um, but one thing that I do love that they continue doing is the guitar solos in harmony,
Hmm.
just like we would do in Sinister Realm, like a Judas Priest, Iron Maiden type thing. That adds a lot, and that's something they've always done, which just brings so much more to a song, just
Hmm.
hearing that. Um, but I, from top to bottom, Master of the Skies and Visualize are, for me, it's a tough choice as to which one's better, but I do like Master of the Skies better, but it's a close second. I love the song Voyeur. That's my favorite song. And again, that's another song. When you listen to him sing it, you can hear and you can feel what he feels when he's singing that song.
Yeah.
Um, Eyes of a Stranger, great song. From top to bottom, I mean, there's not a bad song on it.
Yeah. This one strikes that nice balance for me of being melodic, but yet still heavy. Uh, if you don't know Lizzy Borden, you might know them for Me Against the World. That they had a
Right.
video for that, and that did get some airplay on MTV. So that's a good one. It opens up the record. It's real melodic and really catchy. Shock has a some of that LA sound. It's like they're sort of grabbing that LA sound a little bit more on this record, and I hear
For
that in the
sure.
song Shock.
Yeah.
Outcast is has a great chorus to it. It's kind of a I don't know if I'd call it a ballad. It's kind of like a slow mid-tempo
Yeah.
one or something. The title track, he does awesome title tracks. Visualize
Hmm.
is a fantastic title track, very catchy. The chorus is really great. Eyes of a Stranger, that's another one with a great chorus, a melodic hard rock kind of feel to it. I really like Lord of the Flies. That for me, maybe it's because of the Joe Holmes thing, and I'm thinking Ozzy, but that's got this really great guitar playing in it that sounds like it could have been
Hmm.
Jakey Lee circa Ultimate Sin Ozzy.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is a great one, and I like the mix on this one a lot too. Love You to
Yeah.
Pieces, I like that mix, but it is a little bit lo-fi, little bright. Visualize for me is just it's a great mix. The guitars sound really good. It's got just that nice combination of melody, yet lots of crunchy riffs and stuff like that. Great guitar soloing, great playing from the band. All right, so that
Yep.
leads us to the next one then, which is Master of Disguise. Now, this came out in 89, and this is produced by Alex Wolfman and Elliot Solomon. And the production on this, the band takes a different direction here. At this point, it's only Lizzy Borden and the drummer Joey Scott Hargis, and the rest is fleshed out by studio musicians, guest musicians, a ton of different people. This goes for a completely different approach. The production is a lot of reverb, very stadium like, very big. Makes me think of like this Bob Ezrin. Bob Ezrin could have produced
Hmm.
this record. Bob Ezrin produced Kiss's Dynasty. There's moments on here that remind me of Kiss's Dynasty. There's moments on here that remind me of Pink Floyd The Wall because you got like sound effects. There's somebody calling on a telephone at one point. There's like spoken things and sound effects. There's strings and orchestra stuff in here, keyboard stuff. It's way more focused on the vocals. There's a lot of vocals. It's a lot of like layered vocals in stuff and stuff like that. So yeah, what do you
You
think of
meant
Master?
Kiss Destroyer for Bob Ezrin, right?
Yeah, what did I say?
You said Dynasty.
Oh, Dynasty, right? Destroyer. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Destroyer. Yeah,
If you listen
yeah,
to listen for everybody out there, you hear me rave about Bob Ezrin because I love Bob Ezrin. Listen to Alice Cooper's Billion Dollar Babies, then you'll know. If you want to know what Bob Ezrin does, listen to Billion Dollar Babies, listen to Destroyer, and listen to The Wall. And you'll see the similarities between all those records. Anytime you hear chimes and
mhm,
pianos and strings and choirs, that's Bob Ezrin. He adds that element to it. So even though Bob's not on here, this makes me think like, yeah, this could have
yeah,
been. I can't help but think that they sat back and they listened to The Wall and they listened to Destroyer when they were
yeah,
making this record, as far as like production things go. So what do you think of this
yeah. They're
album?
bringing in violin sounds and
Yep.
flutes and saxophones or trumpets.
Hmm.
Uh, there's intros to most of the songs that are not guitar oriented. It's just sound effects and like Love is a Crime. It has the whole telephone thing going
Hmm.
on, and just Master of the Skies, the way it starts with the build up and the keyboard sounds that are going on. There's when I listen to this and I put headphones in my ears, you can just hear so much that's going on. In every verse, every chorus, every measure of the song just seems like they've really planned this one out. And I read an article that Lizzy did about this, and he said this one was about the vocals. And you can tell when you
Hmm.
listen to it that it is. None of the guitar players are overplaying. Joey Scott's not overplaying. He's just doing some simple fills, not and it's not anything that he can play great. Listen to Love You to Pieces. He does some crazy stuff on there. But sometimes less is more. And I agree that on this one, less is more. I mean, you don't have to start doing some things that don't fit just to show off. It's not necessary. And the songs, just the way the songs are written, it proves that. And I just feel like every single thing was thought out thoroughly on here. And you can tell by when you listen to it, just little things underneath that just fit so perfectly. It, it's it's really good, and I'm glad that we decided to do this because I went back and I've been listening to it a lot the last couple of days, and it really refreshed my memory. And I've heard some things I didn't even hear before.
Yeah, it's I say this on the channel all the time. I like what I call headphone albums. Albums
Hmm.
that you can put headphones on and they're well produced and there's layers of things going on, and this has this all over it with the strings and the sounds and the different stuff. And also Lizzy really like stretches out here. It almost becomes like an actor where
Hmm.
he's using like different voices and like kind of changing his voice up. He's not always in his upper range. He sings sometimes in his lower range. uh there's times where it reminds me also of like Queensryche's Mind Crime, with like him when he goes up in his range and there's all the vocal harmonies and stuff going on. I will say though that I do agree with your point about the less is more, and it is obvious that this album is focused on the production and the songs and the vocals, but I wish there was a little bit. I wish he could have done this record with the old band to give
Oh, for sure.
this a
Yeah.
little bit more personality in the guitar, uh,
Hmm.
a little bit more personality in the instruments. To me, the guitar in this is almost taking a back seat in some ways. In a lot of spots, it's just the guitar is just playing kind of in the back, which is cool because there's a lot going on. But I just kind of wish, because I really like that Love You to Pieces and
Oh, for sure.
Menace,
Yeah.
that band. If he could have done this record with that band, I think that it would have been even better. But as it stands, there's There's a lot of great stuff on here. I love the title track. The chorus on the title track
Yeah.
is just fantastic. It's so kind of triumphant and mighty.
Yep.
The way it
Yeah.
comes out, very dramatic. And the end has the orchestra comes in and it's just
Hmm.
builds up and everything. Just fantastic. One false move. It's got that military snare drum
Oh yeah,
thing
that
going
snare, that
slowly in the
marching
back.
snare. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. It's got a kind of a Floyd, moody Floyd like
Hmm.
vibe to it. Love is a Crime. I think that's the one you were saying. That's yeah, it's got the like
Yeah.
the telephone thing, another Floyd thing there too, kind of a heavy ballad with the acoustic guitars and everything. Phantoms, that made me think of, I mentioned Alice Cooper earlier, Billion Dollar Babies, but this reminds me of it sounds like it could have been on Welcome to My Nightmare from Alice Cooper because it has this almost Broadway, like theatrical Broadway like vibe to it. I liked Never Too Young. I thought that was a great ballad with
That
the
to me,
piano.
that song could have been huge in my opinion. It's catchy. It's a slow song, but it starts with the piano. The melody is great. The chorus is amazing. The bridge is very powerful. I just think if they would have released that song, I know it was 1989, so things were changing, but that song, I mean, Master of Disguise is my favorite song, but Never Too Young is just an amazing song.
And
Absolutely.
I would say too, the side two opener, Be One of Us, that could have been a radio song too, because the
Yeah.
chorus in that is just so catchy. Maybe they might have had there's like kind of a Phantom of the Opera
Lost
intro
Boys.
thing at the beginning,
Yeah.
maybe they might have had to edit that out for the radio. But the
Right.
chorus is just so catchy and it's
Yeah.
so well produced. Psychodrama, I like that one. It's got
Mm.
a reminds me of like a heavier kind of heavy Joe Lynn Turner Rainbow era sound to it.
Hmm.
And again, a little bit of Queensryche in there too. The string section at the end is great. Waiting in the Wings. This is what I was talking about, him using different voices. This is one where
Yeah.
it's like he's sort of taking on a different character, which I think is really cool. Under the Rose is a good acoustic ballad with more layered vocals. The only one I don't really care for is We Got the Power. It's just too poppy for me. And I mentioned
Yeah.
the Kiss Destroyer thing. This sounds like it could have been like, okay, Kiss decided to go with Tomorrow and Tonight.
Yeah.
This was a song that Kiss had, and they said, you know what, Tomorrow and Tonight is better than We Got the Power. So we'll put that one on the back burner. It just has this again reminds me a little bit of Alice Cooper too, like Billion Dollar
Yeah.
Babies. I mean, it's fun and everything, and I guess
Yeah, it's a good song. I think too many horns sounds in it, like in the bridge part, like after uh it's going in, it breaks down then like at the before the last chorus, which I think is a cool part, but it just gets a little too many horns, I think, going on in the background. It's like you were talking stadium sounds. It's kind of what
yeah.
it sounds like in that middle part. But when you were talking about the what he does vocally, I've never heard him do something like the way he does on a lot of these slow songs where he's doing that really low, clear
Hmm.
voice. Like if he does, if he did in the past, it's a little here, a little there, but he really showed his versatility on this one.
Hmm.
And then there's that really high harmony behind it,
Oh yeah.
which just gives so much color to these songs. And that's I do really like Under the Rose and um, uh, all the slow ones really. They're perfect. I think the way that they were produced and just his vocal ability. He just shows off so much range in those songs.
Yeah, definitely. All right, well, there you go. There's some of our thoughts on. We picked three Lizzy Borden albums to talk about. Of course, Lizzy Borden has more albums than that. You want to comment on any of the other Lizzy Borden albums? What are your thoughts on the rest of the discography?
I like Appetite with Death. I never really listened to Deal with the Devil. Just a couple songs, and I know he has My Midnight Things came out in 2023. I only listened to one song. I don't know why. I just kind of, you know, forgot all about listening to some of the new stuff. Um, but Appetite with Death, I really like. Live Forever, Death of Love, Tomorrow Never Comes, Under Your Skin is a great song. Tomorrow Never Comes is and Under Your Skin. They put the videos out for those songs, and he kind of changed his look. He was going kind of with that skeleton, like a skull look up, and
Hmm.
Joey Scott had that big giant mohawk. Um, but I mean, they changed their look, and it was definitely a cool change, I thought, because when we played with them, they kind of were going with that look a little bit more too. But those are great songs. Something's crawling is a really good song. The riff kind of reminds me of Symphony of Destruction from Metallica a little bit if you listen to it, but it's a really catchy riff. That's a really good song too.
Cool. All right. Well,
Yeah,
Chris, thanks for joining me here at the Lair to
sure.
discuss Lizzy Borden. All right. And for everybody out there, let us know what you guys think of Lizzy Borden. Let us know what you think of these three albums that we picked out, or maybe what's your favorite Lizzy Borden record. Make sure you check out the band that Chris and I had, Sinister Realm. We're on all the streaming services, so you can check us out there. And I think I'll be talking more about Sinister. I'm going to make a Sinister Realm video at some point in the future. So maybe we'll have you back for that, Chris. And I know you're a Kiss fan. I've got a
I
bunch
am.
of other Kiss fans too. Maybe we'll get you all together in a room. And I'm sort of the outlier. I like Kiss, but I don't love Kiss. So I'm
Hmm.
always sort of the contrarian when it comes to Kiss. But yeah. All right. So great. Thanks everybody out there. And till we see you again, make sure you stay heavy, stay metal.
Thank you, Stroud.